Okay. Cool. Looks like we got everything running. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, what do we got today? Today, second to last Sunday of the church year. Continuing the theme of end time stuff, look to the end, get ready, etc., etc., etc. So, we've got some fun readings. Same thing as last week, where the Old Testament and Gospel reading are linked, and the epistle actually does work. It wasn't selected to work with these texts, but it just so happens that it falls in line with them. So, woohoo! So in terms of what we're looking at in the Old Testament and Gospel, is Old Testament is Zephaniah. More about the day of the Lord. I will punish the officials and the king's sons and all who array themselves in foreign attire. We get a lot of good judgment stuff going on. Wail, O inhabitants of the mortar. At that time I will search Jerusalem with lamps, and I will punish the men who are complacent, those who say in their hearts, the Lord will not do good, nor will he do ill. That's actually kind of a fun little thing that we can dive into a little bit, was just this attitude of not just like, oh, the Lord will not, he won't do bad, he won't do good. It's a very kind of ambivalent sort of way to approach things, where in a way they're like, well, no, of course God will protect us. He won't allow anything bad to happen to us. But in the same way, it's like, yeah, but he's not going to do anything great. He's not going to, kind of like, he's not going to punish us, but it's up to us to do everything, which is a weird kind of balance, which I guess is not a balance, but it's just a strange place to be. And honestly, I think it's kind of.
Are they quoting God or who?
No. They're quoting the people of Judah? Yeah.
Okay, just general sayings?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
The general spiritual malaise that, or maybe it's the reverse of Christians today, where they expect God to do awesome, incredible things, but they don't expect him to judge. Like, God's only going to do good to us. It's like, is he?
It sounds very deistic in the sense of, like, the early founders here, even like God's there, but he's not.
Yeah, we can't get a good grip on, like, so he's there. To what degree is he going to interact?
Yeah.
Like, oh, he won't do anything bad, but we expect him to do good things. Like, he won't do anything bad to us, but I know he'll bless me. Like, or it's just like, that's a need for some good law and gospel right there. The Lutheran antidote to that is, we only expect God to bring bad things. Like, we should only expect the bad things, so that way as Lutherans we can piously say and look to the cross, and that's all we should expect is suffering, because that brings us closer to Jesus. And then maybe occasionally we'll give God like a thank you for your blessings, but don't raise your hands or anything, because that's too much. So there's that. The one that what I'm preaching on today is the gospel. And you know what? This one might be fun, because I don't know. I have a particular take on this that might be my own, or at least I don't hear too much of it. I've got some issues. Well, I've got lots of issues. I've got many issues. But I have issues with this one. And it's not the parable I have issues with. I have the issues with the way it's been taught, how it comes across, and how people approach it. It's the parable of the talents, where in Matthew's gospel, so there's 3 men. One gets 5 talents, one gets 2 talents, one gets 1 talent. Man goes away, and the 2 first guys, they trade, they invest their talents, and the one who had 5 makes 5. The one who had 2 makes 2. The third one buries his. So the master comes back, and he's like, all right, so let's see it. And both the first 2 say, like, oh, look, I took my 5, and look, I made 5. And he's like, great, awesome, you were faithful with a little, I'm going to put you in charge of more. Same thing to the second. Well done, good and faithful servant. All right. Of course, the last one is the one that we focus on, because he gets the work done here. And he says, Master, where is it? Next page. Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed, so I was afraid. And I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours. And this is another one of my favorite Sundays. So this is how the reading ends and how I'll read it. But his master answered him, "You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sowed and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is the gospel of the Lord."
Thanks be to God.
Oh, that feels just so right. Send him to hell! This is the gospel. This is the good news. Praise be Jesus. You just gotta love it. Oh God, I'm glad that was you walking by, not anybody else. Thank you. Don't need to explain that one to a visitor. Really, please stick around. I didn't mean it.
Maybe we should shut the doors.
Ah, that won't help.
Too late, it's already in line.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you think? Well, and this is not one of those where I'm going to try to be like, this is what it really means, because I think there's a variety of ways of looking at this, and I think there's good things that you can pull from it. I lean a certain way. I don't think it's neither right or wrong. Well, in my pride, I think I'm more right, but that's it. But really, there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. So just throw out some. What are you hearing of this? How is this hitting you? What do you think it's all about?
The only thing I get out of it is use the resources wisely.
Right. Yeah, stewardship. That's how I've always heard it.
Well, it also could be some people are really talented in expressing their love for Jesus and bringing in others. We all have been here, have faith in God.
Mhm.
We should do more with it than what we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's another stewardship. Money, talents or abilities or
Faith is
Faith.
the word I was, yeah.
these are all, yeah.
It starts out, for it will be like a man going on a journey. So what is it? Does it even have anything to do with this life?
See, that's the thing. And this is where I kind of, so there's a lot of, so when you're coming to a parable, I always say, always take it context. You always, what's coming before, what's coming after, when's this happening? And see, what kills me is whenever I hear parables taught, kind of like the render unto Caesar. How people will point out, like, it's not about taxes. It's about, it's about faith. It's all about this other stuff. That and we get to a parable, the seed is not the seed. When he scatters the seed, it's the gospel. Jesus even explains. So, we get to these parables where the thing in the parable is not actually the thing. It means something else. The oil from last week, the oil, nobody knows what it is, but personally, I think that's the point. Nobody knows what the oil is. It's not about oil. It's about being ready. And so then we get to this parable about the talents, and almost universally, I've always heard it like, okay, talents, in this regard, is money, because a talent is a measure of money. It's about money. It says talents. It says money. It's about money. Where I'm like, that seems to go against the way that we're, if we have a hermeneutic, a way of, approaching these things where you're like, not everything in the parable is exactly what it is. But so help me, this is about money. So use your money. And I've heard this in a stewardship message, like Stewardship Sunday. Like, hey, people, dig deep. God wants you to use your money to invest it in the kingdom like these guys do. So invest your money in the kingdom. And I find that problematic in a way, because that kind of leads to like, well, make sure you do it right so you get the good 100% return.
Otherwise, you're gonna go to hell.
Well, and that's the other thing is like at the end of the story, it's like he's kind of like, now there's a little bit more to it. There's a nuance here, and we'll get to that. And I think that can play in both of them. But it leads itself or lends itself, I think, to a certain, I don't know, it just feels. Now, I mean, I think this is about stewardship. in a lot of different ways. I mean, it talks about this. And so I think you can make a decent case for, stewardship of this, that, and the other. And just to jump ahead of things, see, for me, what I'm kind of getting from this is stewardship in terms of just grace. Now, I'm not saying it's just about grace. This is just where I take it. And this could just be from my personal experience. So, blame my horrible whatever that I've gone through, and it's colored my view of it. But, yeah.
No, I don't wanna, okay, the part that always strikes me about this one
Mhm.
is the servant's reply to the master. I knew that you were a harsh man,
Yes.
reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not gather seed, so I was afraid. So every time I read that, I feel very empathetic for this human. And, I try to think like, so the master is known to be that harsh and to take what is not his, right? So if you take it that way, then what are you supposed to, I mean, I understand the stewardship gig, I've heard that too.
Right.
Right, and that's an overall, but then think about, I just think about the person of the master, and it doesn't always fit like the known, I mean, it does fit God, but it doesn't really fit God completely. You know what I mean?
The guy says?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, you're,
So
I
I
agree.
struggle with that part.
And that's kind of where we go to with it, is that, and there's always the turn of like, because for a Lutheran to say this is a stewardship message, the end is where we get screwed up. Because, to be truly Lutheran, it can't be about what you do, and yet he's like seems to be commending the servants like, oh, you did good, you get in, you did bad, you get out. So we're like, So we get to point out in that, so that his view of the master is flawed. He says, you are a hard man. You are not generous at all, and you take what is not yours, which flies in the face of the parable, because a talent, now there's differing ideas of how much a talent was worth, but there's a lot of thought out there that you could equate a talent with 20 years of income. A talent was, I believe, when Babylon had kind of come in and kind of taken over Judah, it became their overseer before the exile. The tribute that they demanded from Judah was a talent. So a single talent for all of Judah paid to Babylon every year. So basically, he gives 2 talents or 5 talents, which would be 100 years of income. 2 talents, which would be 40 years of income, and then 1 talent is 20 years of income. It's a lot of money. Even this, by our Lansing median income is $25,000. I looked it up, 24 and change. So even that is roughly what, $500,000?
Right.
I mean, that's huge. So you've got this picture of a guy who's like, here, I'm going away. Take this ridiculous sum of money. Take it. All right. And he doesn't say, okay, each one according to his ability. Then he went away. It doesn't say he says, do this exactly with it. And there's a sense of like he gives to their ability, to what they need, whatever. And then the 2 servants, the initial ones, and I point this out in the sermon, says, okay, you gave me 5 talents. You gave me 2 talents. These are now mine. You gave this to me, and I used them. They had ownership of it. It was like, okay, well, you gave this to me. This was your gift to me, and I used it, and this is cool. And he has the same response. He's like, well done, good and faithful servant, awesome. But then the 3rd guy, he has no ownership of it whatsoever. He says, first of all, he says, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow. It's like, all we know of the master is he's ridiculously, stupidly generous. And he's like, well, you reap what you don't sow. It's like, dude gave you $500,000. I don't understand what the deal is. And gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, so I'm afraid of him. I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours. So he viewed it like, oh, you're not really giving me something that's mine. You're just expecting me to blah, 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 and take it back. I don't want it. So, see, in my view, when you make it more about kind of grace, faith, and that kind of thing, it seems to fit more with it, where it's like, you know what? The ones who are given, they're like, yeah, this is mine. So Christ on the cross, all the awesome stuff that comes from that, they're like, yes, mine. And I'm going to use it and live in it, awesome. And then the one guy who's like, yes, he received it, or it was given to him, but he's like, no, this is yours. This is not mine. Take it back. Take it back, because I'm afraid of what this means for me. Like, you're going to expect things from me, and I don't like it. And that kind of seems to fit with this, it will be, so like on the last day. Because that's, if we're talking about who is sent to cast out into outer darkness, it's a matter of faith, right? So that seems to fit in a little bit more. Now, the stumbling block with that one is the amounts. Because if it's like grace or faith or forgiveness, then we kind of go to like, well, then why did one person get more?
Well, doesn't Paul talk about that though?
Bring it?
Yeah, but Paul says, I can't remember which letter, that everybody is given, when he's, is it in Galatians? I don't know. When he's talking about he's talking about faith, that everybody has been given a certain amount of faith to their ability, or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and that's what
It's something to his ability, but Paul's talking about faith, I
Mhm.
believe, or not, maybe not faith, maybe he's talking about virtues or
Spiritual gifts.
yeah, spiritual gifts. Where is
Sure.
that?
Sure.
Where is that?
I'm terrible with pulling out the books. But I mean, I think there's something to that, and the distinction.
Maybe. Let's look.
The distinction I make in the sermon today
Yes. Yes.
is that
I'm gonna look it up.
well, there's two ways. There's 2 points of view here. There's the point of view of the master, right? He's just giving out all of his stuff, right? He's pouring out in abundance, saying, "Here, take," and he's giving. Okay, so there's different amounts going, fine, but in his view, it's all going out. To our view, there's differing amounts. Well, I think that really speaks to our experience to a degree. I think we recognize in ourselves that there are different levels of sin. Oh, I mean, I don't think, I know we do. Do you think well, not according to God. So between us and God, you look at your sin, then you look at a convicted mass murderer. Whose sin is greater, according to God? Same, right? According to us, though, whose sin is greater? Mass murder, right? So from our points of view, there are varying levels of sin, whatever. And even now, again, this is not theologically, but perceptually, somebody might need more grace. Well, we all know somebody who needs more grace, right?
Our visitor.
Meanwhile, my wife walks into view. What? Okay. Pardon me, 1 second. Think about that for a second.
We got
Do you know which verse?
12. Look at,
Our
well, I
visitor
don't know
from
about which verse, but he
Wednesday
starts
night
talking
is
about
back.
spiritual gifts on
What's that?
12.
Our visitor from Wednesday night is back.
Oh,
Oh.
her cart was gone.
She's probably looking for her card.
Okay, I have no idea. So anyway,
Well, it says to each according to his ability.
right, and see that where the place where I'm kind of trying to, and I'm not saying that I'm not trying to hammer this into my own little,
These are.
trying to make it work with my understanding. I am. But the thing is I go back to that whole like, it's a parable. It refers to, the things in the parable are always looking to different things. And so kind of in the same way where the oil is not the thing, it's like the amounts are not really crucial and important. And when I would read, he gives the different amounts to the different people according to their ability. I look at it in terms of, well, God gives us the grace we need. So, like I said, theologically, he gives us all abundantly, right? But we all need varying level or differences of love, whatever. And God treats us, and I think this bears out too, he treats us differently and gives us different things according to our need. Experiences whatever. You know, I know there are those people who, you know, they've received something special from God, either in an experience or whatever, and they're convinced of it, and whether it is or not, that's the way God works with them, is he assures them before they're going into something. God gives them some kind of a sign that tells them this is the way that it's supposed to be. And they go into it, yes, confident. Like I see those people and I say, God, why don't you treat me like that? God never seems to do that. Or if he does, I'm just way too oblivious. In my experience, what God does with me, which unfortunately is the way I'm wired, is always the after the fact. He's like, he shows me, he gives me the hindsight and says like, yes, I brought you to this so that you would know. And that seems to be how he works with me. Like I said, I'm not happy about it, but it's what I need. And having 4 kids illustrates this more poignantly to me than anything, is that, you know, I have 4 kids. I love them all equally. But I love them in different ways according to their need. And according to, you know, I give them grace according to their needs and what is required. So, see, in my head, that's sort of the approach.
That one sounded like mine.
Yeah, that's a little Alex.
That would be why he's crying.
So anyway, there's a lot to unpack with these things, and what I was saying at the very beginning, it's always good to go to the context. So you go, when is this happening? This is Passion Week. This is the last couple days before Jesus goes to the cross. He does has a parable about the virgins, the 10 virgins, you know, and the whole thing was be ready. Before that, he was talking about be ready because, you know, I'm coming. I'll be coming back. 10 virgins, be ready, I'm coming. Then there's this parable, which is like, okay, stewardship, yes, but it's about that last day. So what do we do while we're waiting? Well, we're doing stuff. Okay, well, is it just money? So is it like, okay, be ready because I'm coming, be ready, and make sure you're spending your money wisely for me. And then he goes into the next thing after this, I believe, is the sheep and the goats, I think. So now he's talking about separating out the sheep and the goats. Well, who's a sheep, who's a goat? Well, those who believe in me, right, are the sheep. Sorry, Elaine. And the goats are those who don't. And then it goes into the next thing after that is, you know, there'll be some who say, you know, that whenever you've, you know, clothed the naked, fed the hungry, whatever, you did those to me. And you will say, when did we ever serve you, Lord? And he says, when you did this, when you did that, when you did that. And then there are those who will say, look, we did all this. And he's like, I don't even know you. And the whole point is not like, make sure you're doing these things, but he's like, it's more of like, as you're waiting and preparing yourself for that day, you know, just love and serve your neighbor. Don't expect the reward. You know, do it obliviously. Honestly, he seems to commend people for doing things like serving Jesus in ways that they were completely oblivious about. Like, because the people who he commends are those who are like, we served you? I don't think we did. Like, really? We were working for you? We gave you water? When did we ever give you water, Jesus? We were just trying to love people. And he's like, yes, that's the attitude. Awesome. So you have this nice little string, and yes, it is talking about what we do while we're waiting and how to be ready and how we prepare for his coming. But it's just such a weird kind of, at least in my, maybe it's just me. If it's just me, you're going to sit through a sermon that you don't agree with. Whatever. Take a nap, whatever. But for me, it's just weird to have this like progression of, you know, be ready, be faithful, be ready, be faithful. You know, yes, okay, make sure you're giving enough money and devoting your time to volunteering in the church. And remember, it's those who are faithful who get in, and don't worry about your reward. It's just such a weird little kind of like right in the middle there that just doesn't sit well with me. Know what I mean? Am I the only one? If it is, like I said.
Well, but I mean, part of it is this whole section is about the kingdom of heaven, and he's giving them the idea that the kingdom of heaven will have division, that everybody's not going, it's not one big great party, and that people will act. So, I mean, even this one, like you said, starts from the beginning. It's like a master that went away. Where have we heard that before?
Right.
Plenty plenty of parables about that. This is just from a different
Right.
point of view, but this whole last series of parables, the fifth discourse here, is all the kingdom of heaven is, the kingdom of heaven is, the kingdom of heaven is. So, act in faith. The amount really doesn't matter because he doesn't make a
Right. Well, and that's where I think it goes to this, Master, I knew you to be a hard man. It's like the issue is and it's like, it's not even that he didn't, it's like he wasted this coin. Well, why did he waste it? It's not that he wasted it. It's like, the core of that is not like you wasted this gift. It's like
Right.
you didn't know the gift.
Yeah, you didn't know the master.
Right,
You
right,
didn't-
right. And that's kind of that.
Yeah.
That's where I'm trying to go with that. Where it's like, that's the point.
This is gonna sound funny, but looking at it a different way, I'm looking at it not at money, but at what you do with your life to make your light shine so that you bring others
Sure.
to,
Right, right.
And that's how I tend to look at it more, not about money, but about
right.
the call to share the
And the
gospel.
man that put it under the ground
The light of Christ.
Right.
didn't do nothing to bring light to Jesus.
Right.
That's right.
Because he didn't understand the thing.
Yeah. So
And-
that's the way I look.
And I totally I agree with all of that. I think there are so many places where it talks more specifically about those things. Well, I mean, let your light shine out. Don't put it under a basket, right?
Right.
Whereas, like, if you're going to make that point, go to those texts first.
And I think that goes right back to the oil too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't put your light under a
That's what we
basket.
talked about last
Yeah,
week.
yeah. So it's one of those where there's a lot of there's a lot of tendrils there where you can go and it does say a lot of things, a lot of different things.
But then what does Jesus end on? And I'm just gonna, I think like you with this one, so I'm gonna go to bat for us right now. But doesn't.
I'm not against you. I'm not
But I
opposing
mean,
it
doesn't
whatsoever.
the Great Commission like sum it all up what he wants us to do, so that if you look in the light of the Great Commission at the end, then you can apply it here too.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's his last command to us. Go do this one specific thing.
Right. And there's a lot that
And
goes
the
with
Lord
that.
doesn't care about money.
And I'm hoping that's where, well, you can watch it online if you're a glutton for punishment. You can be over there. But for you guys who will hear it today, I think that's where I'm going to end up with it. Just that it's more than, getting away from that. It's not about money. It's like, it's just not. I've always heard it that way.
Well, do you
Which
know
maybe
why?
I'm-
I mean, now I'm sorry, online people.
Want me to mute it?
glitch.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a little.
Uh-oh, the stream's getting fuzzy.
Well, I mean, the church and money, any church and money, you gotta make the money.
Are you
so-
saying? What are you
Yes,
saying?
I am saying, because, you can't upset your parishioners that have money, so you gotta kind of cater to them. And
How dare you.
also, if you preach about giving more money and, stewardship, then, you get more money for your church. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Well,
that's what Jesus would do. That's gonna be a bad day.
Well, he would also turn up some tables and whip you with a sword or something like that. He'll beat you.
With the money.
Yeah, with your money in the courts of the church. He'll take you out to the narthex and. That's a different sermon. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I definitely come at it from a certain point of view. I mean, it's not wrong. The stewardship angle is, it's there. It's just how are you coming to this? What stewardship are we talking about? What exactly does it mean? And money is like, nah, this one isn't, I don't think, a good one for that. And personally, well, primarily because it's so like every other parable. Well, this means this means this. Money. It's about money. It says money. It's money. I'm like,
Well, then tie it into your give unto Caesar's
well, that's the thing. It's
thing,
like
and then if, yeah.
it's really, and it's weird whenever I hear it like pointedly about money. And the thing that also bugs me, this is Festivus for me. I'm airing my grievances.
That's
is problematic for us that just this renders out as talent. Because so help me Lord, I've heard this preached so many times. Like, well, it's not because to be a good, we don't want to just talk about money. Of course, we don't want to put people off. So it's your time, talents, and treasures, right? So it's not just treasures; it's time and talent. And we fix talent. See, it's in the text. It says talent. It's like this has nothing to do with your abilities or your God-given gifts.
Oh boy,
And this is
I
not-
bet that's where our sermon goes. Half the people are watching, right?
I don't know what church you're talking about.
I don't know
Something
either.
out in Detroit, probably.
Right. In Ohio.
But seriously, it's
The
like,
guy with 100 talents is very talented.
well, and that just gets
So he
weird.
should use his talents for the church
Well, my whole
to get
thing,
more money.
whenever I heard that, my whole thing was like, well, then fine, I'm a one talent guy. I don't have to do much because I only got one thing I can do.
Oh,
Gosh
if
darn it,
goes
I'm going to
that
do
way,
it.
I'm gonna laugh right in the middle of the sermon.
Honestly, it lets us know you're awake. That's all.
I give them a lot of hard time afterwards.
But yeah, I think that throws it off too. And I've heard it like they brought it. See, we're talking about talents here. It's like it has nothing. Biblically, this has nothing to do with your
I would
talents.
put down my talents that this might be the theme today.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And if I'm right, like I'll win my own bet.
Oh, maybe that's what we could do on these Sunday morning. We can have a little leaderboard on like who thinks where am I going to go with this sermon today.
We can throw it in my church too. Like, where are they gonna go? Last week they totally went Old Testament preaching. I was like, wow.
I almost went Old Testament today,
Yeah,
but
they
then
went Old Testament last
I
week.
chickened out.
But I have a strong feeling that the talent is.
Yeah, and that's just not the thing.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it really, when you really get to the heart of this parable, it is the man's reaction where he's like, "Oh, you're a hard man. You reap where you do not sow." And even his view of it is like, "Okay, well, you gave me something with the intention that you just want it back. Like you only gave this to me so that you could reap the rewards from it."
Harsh thinking.
What's that?
Harsh thinking.
Yeah, which is like, well, if that's your view of God, it's no wonder you're like freaked out by him and you're
No
afraid.
wonder you're
Well,
gnashing
and
your teeth.
the other funny bit of his attitude is here, have what's yours.
Right.
As though
It was
the
never
servant-
his.
As though the servant is not his
Right.
as well.
Right.
Like, that's kind of the other picture he's painting here is this idea that the servant is his and he knows it because he gets bounced out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's a very good point. The other fun little thing that I do mention it in the sermon that I just love is that when you get down to what this talent is and that it's the breakdown of income, and I was like, wow. So the guy who was given 100 years of income and then doubles it. What does his master say? You've been faithful over a little. Where the master is even recognizing, like, I only gave you a little bit. Like, you just had a little. I will put you in charge of much more. Which again, even if we're talking about like money and abilities, it's like, well, if this is the kingdom of heaven will be like, so we're entering into paradise. So that means, we're going to have even more money and
Yes, see, money. doesn't
stuff, and
matter.
it breaks down. So then it's like, and especially since he doesn't make a distinction between the two, they both use all the gifts to the best of their abilities. They lived in their gift, and so when they get to the end of the day, they both get the same reward. There's no stratification there of like, oh well, you get the bigger house on the better side of heaven or the new creation. You lived in the gated community away from those Baptists and Catholics, and then that's where you're going to be. It's like, no, they both get like, well done good, enjoy, and if you thought what I gave you in this life was awesome, you ain't seen nothing yet. See what you get in the life to come. So that just seems to work a lot better. But yeah, it's just it always like straight stewardship in terms of like give more, do more at church. It's like,
There used to be a big emphasis on that.
I know. I mean, there
And
should
it's been
be.
such a relief not to have that hanging over our heads.
Well, it shouldn't hang over your head. I mean, there should be an emphasis of like giving
I
and
think
doing.
actually the giving
But
went
in
up
the-
when that was taken away.
What's that?
I think the giving actually went up when the pressure was off. It's just interesting.
Well, you know, I've seen the ugly side of that at the synagogue, the whole,
Yeah.
I don't wanna go on that tangent.
Okay.
The whole,
Remember
I
those
do,
days?
I am gonna go
Wait.
on.
And
that.
how do you
Wait,
feel
you're
now?
not gonna
Used
go
to
through
go
it all.
visit people
This could be a
around.
first.
We used to do a time
Postcards.
talents and treasures survey.
Yeah, and that's when this text always comes out, is when you do the survey, or spiritual gift survey, because then you can find out how you can use your talents.
Yeah.
It's like,
And don't you feel much better now? I mean, I
Yeah.
kinda used to dread fall, because we'd have this big campaign, you have to give 10%. It was just, I
oh,
can't buy groceries, you know.
yeah.
There's,
Well, that's an old covenant thing anyway.
Well, this is dragging.
New covenant is
down.
100%.
We're on such a high
but
note.
that's the ugly part.
Right.
Because then,
Gotta lift it back up again.
you know,
Happy
unwittingly or not, then comes the shame, you know what I mean? And then comes the prejudice.
Yep.
And then comes your social hall being named after somebody, and it's like, and, you know, and it's just a horrible situation if you happen to be a person, you know?
There are
And I'll
some.
call myself, like me, who is not high income and is working class. I mean, my husband's laid off right now, again, for months. And, you know, it's like, and then the people, and not in this situation, or not in my current situation, in my past situation, there became a huge, like, division amongst those who did not, who had to work and work and work and work and work, and the people who had.
Hmm.
And that's a
Totally.
horrible, horrible feeling.
Yeah.
Place to be, a horrible place to be. And
But-
it's not, and God does not like it. I absolutely, like, it's clear He doesn't like that.
I've heard stories of some churches that like they post everybody's giving like on the bulletin board.
They used to do that at the Roman Catholic Church at Resurrection.
Yeah. Oh, there's churches still do it.
My biological grandparents, they were always like in total shame because they didn't have a lot of money.
Okay, well, so when my first husband and I went in for premarital counseling, and it was not Schrader, it was another person, we spent 3 sessions with him trying to figure out how we could give 10%. But I was teaching school and he was going to law school.
Focus
and
on the
there was
important
no way,
stuff.
and he finally gave up. I thought he would say something about the fact that my first husband wasn't Lutheran. It
Ah!
was all focused on, can you give 10% to the church? And he honestly finally gave up because we couldn't.
Well, we left the synagogue, I was still Jewish because of this exact issue and
You
being
might
shunned.
wanna click soon. This is getting into true confessions
Oh.
here this morning.
Well, I gotta.
Sorry.
Yeah, we got.
I gotta wrap it up anyway. But no, keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
You people online, you're gonna miss out. So sorry.
That's